Hello, my name is Shanna Smith, and today we'll be talking about how I am working to have a better understanding of my community of Osage City, Kansas. I learned a lot through this assignment. This community was built on railroad and mining communities, and right now our population is slowly increasing. There are several community customs and traditions, going from your traditional homecoming and winter royalty activities. There are some spring break trips that are being planned, which is kind of exciting. And there's a car show and barbecue contest that is a very big deal, and was on TV even, in the best barbecue contest in the US or something like that a couple years ago. Um, so it's been pretty interesting, to learn these things. I've lived here for 15 years, but I haven't really, I've always worked somewhere else. So I've been somewhat disengaged. How do I feel the customs and traditions relate to the faceted areas down here? I really think that it really impacts all of those areas. We can't go forward until we understand where we came from. And I really think that customs and traditions really are a big piece of that. Population characteristics, there's about 2,800 people. I was a little surprised that less than 20% have a bachelor's degree. That was interesting. We're about 50-50 on gender. And we do have a manufacturing company here, called Orbis. They came about 5 years ago, maybe seven, and they employ a lot of folks in our city and our county. So we're predominantly Caucasian white group, here in the Osage City area, but we are having a growth in our Hispanic and Asian population, so that's exciting. Um, I was surprised at the 10% poverty level. I thought that would be higher, because we do have quite a few that are receiving free or reduced lunches. So I'm not sure the different criteria for those two levels. So that would be interesting for me to know. Um, Population characteristics, greatest impact is on, I picked those three areas. It was very difficult for me to narrow those down. Supporting school improvement, I think, is critical, and your population is definitely an impact on how that works. So, communication channels, the city and the school are the main areas that we get information from. And so both of those have web pages and Facebook pages. Many of the groups have Facebook pages. Those are really the primary ways people receive information. Uh, as we do have schools calls and text, and as a parent, I prefer the text. Mail, it's great, but you don't always get it in a timely manner, so that can be somewhat frustrating. And then in one of the research articles that we read, it really highlighted that, our communities are not just a geographical location anymore. And I think that is so true. I hadn't really thought of it in that way, but that's exactly true. And I think the way to bridge those different communities really is communication. So, by having open lines of communication, we can have great impacts on these three areas. Osage City community groups, there are a plethora of groups, and I'm sure there's more that I am unaware of at this point, but these are what I could find as of now. Our PTO is very active and has been very successful in impacting some school improvement projects, and engaging families. They do a great job of advocating for those in need and promoting our students. So I did highlight that lower, but we're really lucky to also have a booster club, and then we have a band parent group as well. But some of the parents, it's a small community, so some of the people are in all of those clubs. So that's kind of interesting as well, and I think it kind of gets people a little worn out. So, leadership, I most definitely think it impacts each of the areas that we were visiting about. But we have several people that are leaders in our community. I didn't put it on there, but also, church pastors, and things would be another key leadership role that is prevalent in our community. But we have the standard, city government, and then the school government essentially. But then we have like some donors in our community, and our alumni. They provide a lot of feedback that's really insightful and helpful. So those are the leaders that are represented predominantly in our district. Osage City economic conditions. So we have a median income of about 58,000 per family, and so I have, that's a little concerning because hopefully we're meeting the needs of all the students. But Orbis has moved into town and has provided a lot of jobs. There has been a standard loss of employment related to COVID-19, and then some disability impacts from that have resulted in a loss of jobs. But overall, I would say economic conditions impact each of the areas below, because when your economic status is safe and comfortable and dependable, then students thrive so much more because their lives are predictable. They know where their supports are. They know that they're safe and cared for. So I would say that impacts each of those areas. Political structure is very similar to most small towns, I think. Although this year, I think it kind of, maybe not this year, in 2020, it seemed to take a bit of a turn with the county commissioners seemed to gain a lot of power, in that they got to decide where funding was going from the government related to COVID-19. And so then some of the school system and city management were at odds over who would get that money. But I think that's somewhat died down now and is doing much better. But both systems are functioning very similarly with a person and then a board. So a superintendent, school board, mayor, city council. And then each of those get feedback and information from our community members, so, parents, families, groups like the PTO, or other like Recreation Commission, all kinds of good stuff. So social tensions. This is one I'm not quite up on as much. So we did have some conflicts over school board members' actions related to their choices about COVID-19 and masks and all of that. That has seemed to have lost some of its fuel, and we're making some progress that way. So that's good. There's some stress related to a gym remodel, in that some of the older folks are frustrated or concerned that if the gym were repainted, that the mural would be painted over, and it's a very historic mural. So there is some current conflict with that. Sometimes there's some friction between sports and band. Who makes more money for the amount of time that they spend, that kind of thing. So some are struggling with that, and then just general personality conflicts, which I think is current in any school or any employment situation, actually. So I did feel that social tensions often impact engagement and school improvement and advocacy, because we sure do lose momentum that way. Previous community efforts, as I said, haven't been here for my whole life, so I'm not totally aware. The bond for the football stadium and track, that was while we lived here. The aquatic center was right before we lived here, is when they got that started. And then Christmas on Market has been going for quite some time, and all three of those have been very successful. I am not aware of any major community efforts that have not been successful. However, that might be something I learn about in my new position within the district. Power structure. So county commissioners versus schools, that power structure gets a little interesting. We did also have some struggles with COVID-19 families and the schools, but I think that also is dying down and doing better. sports versus activities, which is more important, which takes the priority. I love sports and activities more than most people, but I would say that academics should come first. So that those were the key areas for power structure. Multicultural issues. This is we're very limited in diversity, which is really sad. But so I'm not knowledgeable on the resources available. I know there's a survey at the beginning of the school year, as most schools do, and then there's resources for testing. We do have a growth of population for our Hispanic and Asian um, folks, and so that's pretty exciting. And I would say that those issues would fall into each of those areas. We need to make sure that we are considering them on each of those, because it does have multicultural issues will impact each of the areas that were highlighted there. Public opinion. It's like, feedback is your friend, is what I've heard from one of my bosses before. And you're right, it is. Sometimes it's just tough to hear, especially the Facebook version. But word of mouth is another way that we get public opinion. Committees, meetings, person to person, which is one of my favorite ways. Sometimes people just go and talk to someone's supervisor. I think it's best to kind of follow the chain of command personally, so that you can get that feedback. And then we need to work on doing a good job at taking that feedback in a respectful way as well, because I think that's an important skill. Surveys, emails, phone calls are all great ways that we have the public share their opinion about their education of their students and our community. So, and I felt it impacted those three areas. From weakness to strength. So, the three areas that I did not have as much information on would be the social tensions, the previous community efforts, and multicultural issues. And I would say with each of those areas, communication is really the best way that I know to grow in those areas. So I would like to have some sincere conversations with representatives in each of those areas. Like the previous community, I want to talk with some of our older folks in town who can tell me more about the history of this area. Social tensions, that's one that I've purposefully somewhat avoided since I didn't work in the district. That my kids go to. I paid attention to the educational piece for them and not so much on anything else. So I need to do a better job of finding a good resource for accurate information, and start some conversations. And then also with our new students that may have some additional needs because of their diverse backgrounds, and we need to meet them where they are. And communication, I really think, is the key to getting us all to working together and getting us on the same page. So, understanding my community. So, today, this assignment helped me a lot in multiple ways. Again, I'm not from this community, but it really did help me to go back and do some research about this area and how it came to be. And that helps me understand a little bit more of how this community is the way that it is. And then how's it relevant? It's relevant in two ways. One, I think it's important to know about the community you live in, and I'm a little sad that I didn't know as much as I thought I did. But now I'm going to be working in that district, and this really helps me have a firm ground to start from. I feel like I do have a general understanding to start from, so that I can jump right in and start hopefully making a difference from the very beginning, instead of trying to get my bearings in the beginning. So hopefully that will have a great impact on our students and my ability to support staff. And then personally, I'm starting in the district in August. This is really, really helpful for me to have a deeper understanding of what our community means as a whole, and a better understanding of the micro communities within. And here are my references. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.